So today we're going to be talking about small unit tactics that encompasses a lot of different things, but 5 main points, okay? So our first points are organization. These people, how these people come together into some sort of unit, okay? Then we're going to talk about when we put the people together into a unit, how we put them together into formations, into something that can be battle ready, okay? Next, we're going to talk about movement types. When we put them into those formations, how they move. And then finally, we're going to talk about the patrols. When we put them and they're moving into these formations, how we move. What types of movements we do. And the last point there is battle drills. We'll cover some very, very broad topics of how these units, when they engage in the enemy, how we do that, okay? So first we look at organization, all right? The first part is unit organization, how we compile those people, and then the manning charts, who is involved in those units, okay? So we have 5 main elements. There are different ones, but these are the key ones. You have your 2-man team, which is your smallest available tactical unit. Problem with this is it's not usually going to be your most probable element, but it is an available option. Then we look at your fire team. So your fire team is going to be 3, 4, or 5 people, and they're going to be either assault, support, or a special designated team. Next you have your squad. So your squad is going to be either 2 or 3, sometimes even 4, but mostly 2 or 3 fire teams, 5 to 8 man people. Squads can go up to 10 people. And that comprises of 2 or 3 fire teams. Then we have your element. Your element is a composite unit. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because that is a little bit more complex. But your element is going to be usually at least 1, maybe 2 squads, different teams, sometimes even 2 additional 2-man teams. And then finally, we have our over-encompassing unit, which is the platoon, or in our case, the Fury platoon. The largest available maneuver unit. So first, let's look at your basics. Your fire team. Most cases is going to be about 4 people. As you see in the picture here, you have your team leader, your grenadier, automatic rifleman, and a rifleman. Depending on how the operations go, you may not have a grenadier, you may not have an automatic rifleman, but generally you have about, again, we go back to 3 or 5 people, 3, 4, 5 people. And this can be an assault unit, or it can be in a support unit, depending on just simply what the commander wants the unit to act as. And they can handle most basic assignments. Next, we look at your squad. Finally, your squad is providing both assault and support elements. Okay, so you've got your fire team Alpha, fire team Bravo. Fire team Alpha can be your support. Fire team Bravo can be your assault, or your assault and support. So, and then obviously they're crowned off with a squad leader position, and that can handle pretty much any objective you want at a fundamental basic level. And you can add on to the squad, whether it be a sniper team, mortar team, whatever it is. And that leads us into our next position, which is your element. So your element is going to be a composite force that is purpose-driven for a specific task. I want you to attack, for example, I want you to attack this specific enemy position, and you need a certain type of equipment to do this. So we look at our example here, example of a missile machine gun element. This is a perfect example of being able to attack a certain enemy position, like a checkpoint. Let's say it's an enemy road checkpoint, but they have a BMP. Well, the problem is you can't take out a BMP with a machine gun. I mean, not really. So you're going to need a missile. So what we have here, if we look at this diagram, we have an Alpha team, your assault team. You have a Bravo team, your support team. You have a Javelin, which is an RPG team. And then you have a gun team, your machine gun team, to suppress dismounted enemy forces on the ground. And then the rocket team to actually knock out vehicles. Then finally we have it says SL, squad leader, but it's an element leader. And that's ultimately his job, is to command and control the entire operation. So an element is just a combined unit designed for a specific task, and it can be teams, it can be two-man teams, you can have multiple squads. It's like a Lego. You put it together, and it combines what you want it to be, okay? Now let's move on to formations and maneuvers. So when we talk about formations and maneuvers, we're talking about all those teams, elements, squads, all of that we're talking about. Now they're moving. Now they're going to do things. And this is the different types and ways that we do this, okay? First, we look at these. What are these formations, okay? So there's some basic formations. Now, quite honestly, there's hundreds of formations, both in the American Army, British, French, Russian. Everybody has their own different, little different ways of doing this. But these are your fundamentals, okay? These are your basics. So we first look at your file. Your file is exactly that, just a group of people walking in a straight line, not to be confused with your line, which is a little bit different. We'll talk about that. Then you have your wedge, which is very simply that, a wedge, a kind of a V-shaped group of people. Then you have your actual line, which is a line of people, but it's not exactly that, and we'll talk a little bit more about how the line is not truly a line, especially when you start talking about larger formations. And then we have your column. And your column only comes into play when we talk about squads or larger elements. Your fire team and your two-man teams are not going to be using columns because it's not possible with that number of people. First, let's look at your file. So your file is just that. It's a group of people walking in a file, usually through difficult terrain or like mountains, thick forest, something of that nature. Maybe even a minefield. So you might be using this depending on how not only your terrain, but your situation looks like. We look at, you have the greatest amount of control because the squad leader or the element or team leader, the leader of the unit exercises the greatest amount of control over the unit because you're just moving in this file. He can say go left, go right, and everybody will go, and it's very easy. But we look at the security. So when we look at this diagram, the biggest problem anybody with a security mind will say is, well, if you get attacked from the front, there's not much you can do. You're in this file. You have to fan out in order to open up your greatest amount of firepower. And that's true. That's why your file is best made for moving fast, moving through thick terrain, getting through it, and then opening back up into your normal formations, which is your wedge formation. So your wedge formation, as we look at here on the diagram, we have one that's kind of facing right, facing left. Either one works fine. It just depends on what you want. Either one's fine. This is your basic fire team formation. If you have a fire team and you don't know what formation you should be in, immediately go to the wedge. If you don't know what to do, go to the wedge. You have good control, you're flexible, your security is 360. If you look at the diagram, any direction you attack this formation from, they can immediately get into some sort of defensive perimeter, okay? No matter what. You have a balance of firepower. You have the automatic rifleman on one side, you have a grenadier and a rifleman on the other side, which means that no matter what, you're going to run into trouble if you attack this formation. Then we look at a line formation. So a line formation, a lot of times you'll look at, if you look at movies, you have this line formation of people walking in a straight line. That is not a correct line formation. That's a very bad line formation. And that's usually what gets people killed. So this line formation, as you see in the diagram here, we have basically it's a line, but it's a line of two wedges. So these two wedges allow the formation 360 degrees of security. You have the squad leader or the element leader, whoever it is, the commander in the center to be able to control all maneuvers, and in the event of contact, be able to control what the other element is doing, or the other squad or other fire team. And so you're able to control everything despite whether it's in combat or not. Now, admittedly, yes, there's a greater amount of firepower positioned to the front, but it's very easy, despite what some of the characteristics say. In my professional opinion, this is ideally what you want to do if you are moving on a determined objective. You know the enemy is here. We're going here. We're going to move into this line formation. Then we look at a column formation. So your column formation is kind of like the line, but you're going to put them behind each other. You have your alpha team, as you see in the diagram. You have your squad leader and his command and control group. And then finally, you have your Bravo team, which is going to be pulling up the rear. Now, the thing about the column formation is that can go multiple ways. You can have that going all the way back. So you have, in the diagram, you have alpha team, squad leader, Bravo team. But you can also have a Delta, Charlie. You can have multiple teams chained down. We'll see that a little bit when we look at the battle drills, because that can go a long way. We'll examine that further. Now we're going to talk about, now we've looked at those different formations, now we're going to talk about how those formations move. Okay, there are basically three ways those units move. First is traveling. Traveling is very simple. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're just going. Your focus, as you see here, is on speed. You need to get somewhere. You need to go fast. Your distance is close. You want to keep control, and you want to be able to maneuver people over rough terrain or over enemy-held terrain. But generally, you're only going to use this if it's not in enemy territory. Then we look at traveling overwatch. So we have traveling. Then we're going to have traveling overwatch. It's a little bit different, but you're staying with the same basics. You have, as you see in the diagram, you have an increased distance, and now your alpha team is operating similar to that of a recon team. And we'll talk about reconnaissance more, but they're not truly reconnaissance. They're just sort of like a probing team. They're out there to see if anybody attacks you. They're not going to attack the entire group. They're a little bit stretched. You think you're going to use this formation when you think the enemy is there, but you're not entirely sure. One of the key imperatives of this is radio communication. So the alpha team leader, that point team leader, is going to have positive radio communication, which is to say not hand and arm signal. You have to have electronic communication with your squad leader, and it has to be confirmed and effective, okay? Then we finally look at bounding overwatch. So your bounding overwatch has two basic parts of it. You have successive and alternate bounding. First, we'll look at successive. We'll look at successive first. As you can see in this diagram here, we have your initial position. So we have Fury platoon here. Then we want to first move the first element or first squad here. You can kind of see in this diagram they move to that little hill with the trees and everything. Second squad moves over to the opposite hill. Third, they move up. Fourth, they move. You'll notice they're all equal. They're all moving on the same equal plane. Okay? That's successive. They're staying on the same equal. So as one element moves, the other one moves on line, I should say, on line. So on, okay? Now let's look at alternate. Alternate bounding is a little bit different. You're a little bit more focused on speed, but you're also focused on security. So we look at that here, and we have our Fury platoon. That first squad moves there. You can kind of see it in the diagram to this little village. Then the second squad moves up to them, past them, and moves to another hill. So you'll notice they're bounding past each other. This is alternate bounding. You're going past each other, and each one is going to cross each other's line of control. So bounding overwatch has two main points, but the commander will make the decision, and the commander also needs to be specific about what type of bounding overwatch they want. You know, you need to be specific about, do you want successive bounding overwatch or alternate bounding overwatch, okay? All right, so now we're going to launch into patrols. Patrols are going to be a long and very lengthy discussion, and I'll try to keep it short. However, each one of these will have its own separate diagnostic. We'll have a separate look at recon. We'll have a separate look at raids. Each one of these will have a kind of a deep dive because they are unique upon themselves. So first, let's look at some basics of patrol fundamentals. So the 5 fundamentals of patrol is planning, reconnaissance, security, control, common sense. Planning. Everything needs to be quick, simple, easily understood by everyone, even the not so sharp members of your team. Everybody needs to understand what's going on, okay? Recon, confirm what you know. At the very least, look at the map and know what's going on out there. Where are you going, and what does it look like? If you don't look at a map, then you don't know what you're doing. Control, make sure everyone knows the plan. Everyone understands what the desired output. So what is the mission? What are we going to do? And then finally, decisive points. Everybody understands, okay, this is when we attack here. This is when we have an ORP. We'll talk about ORPs. This is where we're going to do this. Everybody understands a fundamental, and that way everybody, you have control over everyone in this patrol. Finally, security. Obviously, security reduces casualties, prevent the harm on the force. Make sure everybody's paying attention. Make sure everybody has 360. And the last point there, common sense, goes without saying. With all available information, make the best judgment, okay? That judgment is going to be mostly on the commander, but it's on everyone else. You need to pay attention to what you're doing. Simply use common sense, okay? So let's look at the first one, patrol base. Your patrol base is going to be probably the most common field exercise you'll do because it's very simple. That's how you're going to spend your day. So you see here, it provides a fortified position, but it's a semi-fortified position. We'll talk about it a little bit because we look at the next point that says 1 to 2 day sustainable position. Your position, okay, it should only be 1 to 2 days, but depending on your mission, it may have to be 3 or 4 days. You want to be able to fortify that. That means building, not necessarily fortified, bunkers, but just moving trees or moving dead trees in a position that maybe you can build a machine gun pit. You can cover yourself from air cover, enemy helicopters. You can build this position that allows you to sustain life, sustain a defense for at least a day. So in that patrol base, one of the key notions is Okoka. Okoka is a term that we use when we're looking at whether it's fortified positions, patrol bases, and we'll see this again when we look at ORPs. It stands for observation and fields of fire, cover and concealment, obstacles, key terrain, avenues of approach. Each one of those is a factor that you need to take into account when you're looking at where to place a patrol base or an ORP, an objective rally point. Observation and fields of fire, very simple. You want to be able to see the enemy coming before they are on you. Cover and concealment, again, same thing. You want to make sure that when they do see you and you start shooting, you have something to hide behind, whether it's a rock, a tree, whatever it is. You have something that'll either cover you, that is to say stop incoming rounds, or concealment that may not stop incoming rounds, but it will at least disguise your position, okay? Obstacles, kind of the same thing. You want to make sure you're not creating a patrol base in a river. So you want to make sure that obstacles, rivers, hills, rocks, trees, whatever it is, are positioned around you in such a way that will allow you to engage the enemy, but make it harder for them to engage you. Key terrain, you want to stay away from key terrain. So key terrain would be like a hilltop, a road, a village, a building, whatever it is, you want to stay away from those because that's going to gravitate enemy forces. You want to be, remember, your patrol base is meant to be in the shadows. It's not an offensive position, okay? And then finally, avenues of approach, that kind of goes with key terrain in the sense of you want to stay away from roads, trails. It could be something as simple as animal feeding areas. So if a animal herder, this is something some of you might have seen in the movies, you want to stay away from areas where shepherds or herders are bringing their animals, because they can accidentally find you. Then you have a whole other problem on your hand. As you see in the diagram here, your patrol base is 3 angles. You have a kind of a triangle area. On each end of that triangle is a machine gun position, or your security post. As we say, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Each night, each one of those security positions is going to be occupied by either a machine gunner, or at the very least, just somebody. Somebody's there watching, making sure nobody comes up on you on your back end. If you have them, and if it's possible, you're going to set mines, like claymores, out on the outskirts of that position. If you don't, then you make do with what you have, but you're going to maintain that 360 security perimeter, okay? Dead in the center, you see CP, your control point, your command point. That's going to be your unit leader. Radios, that's going to be usually where you'll have any sort of, as we like to say, business meeting. If you need to talk about how command and control is going to work, it's all going to work there. If you're getting ready to launch an attack, all the planning will take place there. Meanwhile, you still have your 360 control, okay? Getting into a patrol base is a whole nother thing, and honestly, we probably need to have a whole separate class on that, because patrol bases are a very complex subject, okay? We'll talk about that another day. Let's talk about objective rally points. So objective rally points are going to be something that you use before you launch an assault, or you launch a raid, or you do anything. Really, anytime you do a military operation, this is the first thing you do. Honestly, just an ORP, is objective rally point, an ORP, is going to be kind of like your get ready phase. Here in the diagram here, we also have a link. You're welcome to look at that, and it is very well done. This is from I believe a movie of some sort, but they do a great job of describing and showing what an ORP is and how they do it, which is getting all of their equipment ready for the task at hand. A lot of times when you're conducting a patrol, you'll have heavy rucksack, you'll have gear, you'll have various types of electronics, you'll have all sorts of equipment that is designed for everything. But you're going on this patrol you're doing this ORP for a specific mission. That can mean, okay, first of all, drop your heavy rucksack. There's no need to be running around in combat with a rucksack. Drop that. Make sure you have all the equipment. All these sort of pre-combat checks are what you're doing during the ORP meeting. You see in the diagram, it's like a circle, so you want to have 360-degree security. It is OCOCA sensitive, so you're going to take all those factors into account. But the difference between your ORP and your other forms, I'm blanking on what the term is. I have to back up. Patrol base. The difference between your ORP and your patrol base is going to be that your patrol base is designed, specifically built for overnight staying. Your objective rally point is not. It's quickly. You're only doing this less than a day, less than 24 hours. You're going to be doing this for only, maybe at maximum, I would say 12 hours. Less than that, preferably, because you're only going to be using this right before you go into an ambush, an assault, a raid, whatever it is, and we'll talk about those later. So let's talk about some recon and recce. So this is another subject that's going to be a topic of a much longer video by itself, because I say recon and recce, they're not the same, but they're exchangeable. But we'll just call it recon for now. Again, like I said, this is a very detailed and extensive topic that we'll discuss in more descriptive content later. So first we look at some basics. Always have your security element. Remember, we talked about ORPs. You're going to have an ORP before you conduct any sort of reconnaissance, but you're also going to have a security element as you're conducting during the recon, okay? And their job is purely to protect the recon element. So while, if we want to put in in visuals, you may have a recon element that may have a high definition camera, they may have binoculars, they may have this equipment. The security, their job is to make sure that those people stay alive. That's it. They have no other job. They are not watching the objective, they are watching everything else, okay? When you're doing this, you make sure you clearly define the recon objective. Make sure that you know exactly what you're there to recon. A lot of times you'll see in some movies where a recon element is exactly that. It's just this recon element. You want to make sure that they know exactly where they're going and what they're going to do, and what information requirements, which is CCIR, Commander's Information Requirements, CIR. You want to make sure that they understand each one of those requirements, what information requirement is needed, and how to get them. Then finally, the last point there, clear and detailed reports. So each one of these reports we're going to talk about a little bit, but needs to be as detailed as possible, with as much information, eliminate superfluous, unnecessary information, and make sure they're written and recorded. So next, again, we have another link, just a very simple examination of a recon unit, and then we're going to look at some of the objectives that probably going to be involved with almost any recon. So first is just determining routes of maneuver in impassable terrain. Anytime you're on a recon, that's kind of one of your side jobs. No matter what your primary objective is, your side jobs just determine roads, routes, trails, areas that cannot be passed. So like a cliffside, or if you come across a road that has, some sort of, maybe it's a destroyed car of some sort, something that eliminates your main movement from being able to pass that area. Identify and describe key points and enemy positions. So first, this is where we're going to talk about reports. So we look at that salute, S-A-L-U-T-E. Each one of that: size, activity, location, unit, time, and equipment. What does that mean? So when you observe an enemy unit or a civilian unit, anytime you observe during a recon a unit of some sort, enemy, could even be friendly, or civilian, we're going to take these first key points into account. Size. Well, how large is it? How many people? If it's a large unit, like battalion size, use rough numbers. But if it's a small unit and you have maybe 5 people, be accurate. Okay, 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. Activity. What are they doing? Are they patrolling? If it's civilians, I got 3 civilians in the open picking berries. What are they doing? If it's a Russian patrol, it's a 5-man Russian patrol walking along the road. Activity. So location is pretty simple. Obviously, the best idea is to give them a grid coordinates on a map. That may not be totally possible. Do the best you can, but you want to be able to give them the grid coordinates, at the very least, a rough location. Outside Sodoreti, outside the village, walking down Chavchavadze, whatever it is. You want to give them a basic idea of where they are. Unit. Okay, so the U can actually go 2 ways, unit or uniform. So if it's a military unit, for example, we use our Russian patrol, try to gauge who they are. If you can get a specific unit, perfect. The 342nd, 1st Battalion of the 342nd Mechanized Regiment. Boom, perfect. But you may not always be able to do that because that's a difficult task. Maybe you can determine who they are, unit. Okay, I don't know what unit, but are they military police? Are they infantry? Are they Spetsnaz? Who are they? And you can usually use some sort of uniform identifiers to determine who they are, okay? And then uniform is also something, if they're civilians, are they just civilians picking berries, or are they people that are wearing military equipment, unarmed, but they're foraging for food because it's part of a paramilitary unit? So that's part of the whole the uniform thing. So you want to describe their outfit and how they look. Time, that's pretty simple. Give them the time, the date, the year, everything. Because what we'll be able to do, especially in a higher command, we'll be able to look at both the time and location and track movements. Particularly when we look at uniform, we're able to track the time, the location, and this unit as they move around the battlefield. Finally, equipment, pretty self-explanatory, but you want to go into as much detail as possible. That could be everything from what kind of weaponry do they have. We go back to the Russian patrol. Do they have AKs? Do they have PKMs? Do they have RPGs? If it's 4 people and the only thing is an AK, they're probably not a threat. They're probably not much of a problem. But if it's 4 people, one has AK, one has PKM, one has RPG, one has a rucksack full of what we don't know, could be explosives. That presents itself as a different problem than just 4 people with AKs walking. So that's why we want to look at equipment, because we want to look at types that could have a hint on what their purpose is, and that'll kind of determine how we need to react to that. And then finally, the last point there under objectives for any recon is avoid enemy contact. You'll see in some movies where a recon element gets into some crazy firefight. That is exactly what you do not want for a recon. Your entire job is to simply gather information. You are not there to get into contact with the enemy, okay? Finally, you'll see on the diagram here to the right, there's different types of recon organization. Again, like I talked about, we'll go into a farther deep dive of different types of recon elements and how they work. But there's basically kind of 3 fundamental ways. You have a separate recon and security element. You have combined elements, RNS, which is a recon and security team, RNS team A to RNS team B. And then finally, you have your sort of separate but autonomous security element in that last part, 3. You have your recon element, which has RNS team A and RNS team B, but then you have your ultimate security element, which is designed as a QRF, quick reaction force. Now let's look at linear danger areas and open danger areas. Linear danger areas, best described as just being a road, but it can be other things, like a river. It can be any sort of linear, which is a long, straight, or some sort of road-like structure where you need to cross it, but you need to cross it securely and safely. So first, let's look at that. So when you remember we talked about the column. The column here, in this case, is probably more of a platoon size, so you have the entire team, the entire group there. The first thing you want to do is you want to kick that team across on the other side of the ODA, or LDA, linear danger area, because the first thing you want to do is you want to create a safe space. And I'm going to demonstrate this here. So you have your road, your team is coming here. Okay, first thing you're going to do, remember we talked about ORPs, and set up an ORP, set up a safe area here, and you're going to set a team across on the other side of the road. Your purpose for doing that is to making sure that if you cross the road, you're not going to get ambushed. Okay, so they're going to go over here, they're going to check the area in what we call a cloverleaf. We'll go into that more when we talk about reconnaissance. But they're going to check the area and make sure that, number 1, there's no enemy. Number 2, it's safe, it's clear, there's no buildings, there's nothing unexpected, but there's also something like no mines, no obstructive things that are going to cause your patrol to get into more problems than you saw. So you're here, that team leader is going to come, whether it's radio back or signal back to the commander and saying, hey, everything's fine, everything's clear. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to set up security. So you're going to set up two security elements on each side of the road, just looking down the road, making sure the enemy doesn't come. If you're trying to be more secure or more secret, civilians don't come. If they do, obviously if it's civilians, you're not going to shoot them, but you're going to say, hey, this is off limits area. You're not allowed to be here. You don't need to discuss any further, and they'll go away. So you've secured it. Everything's okay, so they've done that. So they're in their position. They're going to set up sort of like a small ORP, just watching out. And then as this security is finally set, the rest of the column is going to go ahead and cross the road, okay? Once they cross the road, everybody else is going to collapse back, okay? They're going to get back in formation, and you continue moving like normal, okay? Now let's talk about open danger area. So open danger area is any sort of open area that could be potentially a security problem. So that could be an open field, that could be just a clearing in the forest, it could even be a city, it could be anything. And it can range in size from, like I said, a small clearing as small as this office, all the way to the size of an actual city. And there's two main ways you're going to go around that. Your two main ways are going to be the contour and the detour. So imagine, if you will, this is entirely forest. And this is your forest clearing. Okay, this is just an opening in the forest. As you're moving, you have two decisions. You can, like we said, contour or detour. Contour is going to be, you're going to go up to the edge of the forest and follow it until you're at a designated point on the other side that is in line with your original direction of movement. Remember, most times you'll have a compass. You say, okay, I'm walking at 200 degrees. You need to pick a particular point at that opposite area and walk to it. Detour is a little bit different. Detour is a little bit more complicated, but detour will keep your azimuth true. So, again, you know your azimuth. We're going to determine 50 meters this way. So we'll say 50 meters, and then we're going to determine that the size of this open area is 100 meters, just for simplicity's sake. So we have 100 meters, and then we're just going to move 50 meters back. So all you've done when we're calculating distance, azimuth, and ranging qualities, we're looking at 50 meters, then we pass the terrain 100 meters, 50 meters back. So we've regained our azimuth, and we've only passed 100 meters. So we're able to calculate that when we're talking about ranging and distance and pace count. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about recon as well, okay? So we have linear danger area and open danger area. Next, we're going to talk about ambushes. Again, we have a link. You can check that out when you have time. We have two major types of ambushes. These are really all you need to know. You have hasty and deliberate. Hasty is exactly what it sounds like. It's designed to say the team leader or element leader, the unit leader, has designated that there is enemy movement, and we have a very short time to organize an ambush. So basically you see the enemy before they see you. Your team leader is going to determine your kill zone and how and your layout of forces. Ultimately the team leader is going to be the one that initiates the ambush. Okay? There's little to no what we call TSE, which is tactical site exploitation. And that's a military science term for we're checking bodies, we're picking pockets, we're looking for maps, we're looking for equipment, we're looking for all that. But you're not going to really do this because, again, hasty. You're going to hit them and you're going to disappear. You're going to go away because you don't know what the enemy could be bringing behind them. Generally, you're still going to issue up a salute report. Remember we talked about size, activity, location, unit, time, equipment. You're still going to initiate or send that up to higher. But you're not going to give very much details because remember you're not digging through pockets, you're not taking patches off because you just need to hit them and go home. Deliberate. So deliberate is where we're going to dive in a little bit more about how an actual ambush is carried out. So the time and the location is going to be determined based on your intelligence, of what you're able to do, but also based off the enemy and their activities as well. The team leader is going to carefully and exactly, almost surgically, select the organization. So that's where we go. Remember, we talked about elements. Your element is going to be constructed based off what the enemy is. So if it's a motorized column, you're probably going to have some RPGs, some anti-tank weaponry, versus if it's just a dismounted patrol, you're going to want to focus more on your light and medium machine gun equipment, okay? But the team leader is going to construct that, and in this type of ambush, the team leader is not going to be the one that starts the ambush. This is going to be started by your machine guns or your RPGs, your rockets, okay? your most, what we call the most casualty-producing weapons are going to be the one that starts your ambush, okay? And then finally, that last point there, extensive TSE, technical site exploitation. You're going through, you're picking pockets, you're taking rings off fingers, you're taking maps, you're doing everything. You're trying to figure out every single piece of thing you can do about this unit. One of the things which is interesting now versus when I first went into the Army, we have Velcro. So as you're going through this tactical site exploitation, a lot of units are going to have Velcro attached patches, flags, everything like that. You're taking it off. You're ripping that stuff off. You're putting it in your pocket, because that's going to give you information about not only that unit, but where they came from. Let's just be honest about this, and let's just call it what it is. Most Russian units are going to be operating with asymmetric units attached to them, which is mercenaries, Cossacks, asymmetric units from South Ossetia, Abkhazia. They'll pull people from Donbass. They'll come here so they can fight, because you know who's paying them? The Kremlin. Let's just be honest about this, and let's not try to hide this information. It's true. When they do that, you can determine who they are. Okay, it's a Cossack battalion. From where? Circassian. They're Circassian. Okay. Oh, look, he has a patch from Donbass. So that gives us additional information, battlefield information, so that we're able to not only, well, first off, prepare and counter that information, or counter that unit, because now we have the information in their battle history, but we'll also be able to go to friendly companies and say, hey, these aren't Russian soldiers, these are mercenaries. So it gives us that's going a little bit farther down, but that's essentially what we're able to do. That extensive TSE goes farther than just patches, but it's maps, it's equipment. Depending on the equipment that we have, we're able to also gain there. So if we have a PKM machine gun and we take their PKM ammo, that solves us a little bit of problem, supply. So we're able to, so this deliberate ambush is going to allow us to exploit a very intense enemy opportunity here. So let's look at these two types of ambushes. We have two main types. We have linear and L-shaped. So linear is pretty simple. Linear, as you see in the diagram, you have just a long, like a road, or like an LDA, where we know the enemy is going to be crossing. You look at both sides. We have security on each side, making sure not only that they'll tell us when the enemy is coming, but they'll also be watching to make sure that they don't have forces, counter ambush forces trying to find us. Then we're going to go ahead, and you see in the little diagram, and I'll actually make a diagram here. So you have your road. Enemy is coming this way. You set your security. And you set your linear ambush force. All right? And then you're going to have either your machine gun or missile team, depending on the type of ambush that you're laying. And obviously, if it's vehicles, you're going to have a missile or RPG team. If it's just dismounted, you'll have a machine gun team. And then you have your assault element here. So your assault element, once they enter the kill zone, they're going to launch just a forward attack. I mean, there's no other way to describe it other than everything you've got. Guns, bayonets, grenades, everything, go. Kill. I mean, just kill, kill, kill. And so once it's complete, they're going to reach what's called an LOA, a limit of advance. Sorry if my handwriting is not perfect, but your limit of advance is going to be the final point that your assault force is going to reach. Once they reach that point, they stop, and you're going to come back, okay? And you're going to check on things like ammo, equipment, ammunition, water, things of that nature. So that's your linear ambush, okay? Pretty simple, very straightforward. Your machine gun team is just, or missile team, depending, is going to be focused on this. As soon as your assault force starts the attack, this support team is going to stop firing, whether it's RPGs or machine gun, they're going to stop, and your assault team is going to go forward, okay? Now let's talk about the more common and my personal favorite, the L-shaped ambush. So your L-shaped ambush is going to be a little bit different. You can kind of see in the diagram here where fundamentally it's the same. You still have an assault team, you still have security teams, you still have your machine gun or missile team. However, it's a little bit different in their structure and how you operate these. So again, we look at our road, but our road, generally you're going to use this on a curve in the road. So you're going to have your security teams. You're going to have your machine gun missile, so we'll just put MG, but it can be a missile team as well. And then you're going to have your assault team. Okay. Your kill zone is going to be marked in a similar way. Kill zone. A little crazy Z there. So your machine gun is going to be positioned almost looking straight down, almost looking straight in the eye of your of the enemy, okay? And your assault team is going to be perpendicular, okay? So they're going to be kind of like when we talk about an L. Their L, you have your machine gun, you have your assault team. They're going to be perpendicular from your actual assault team, the machine gun team it is. Your limit of advance, same thing. And they're going to do the same thing, except one key component of the L-shaped ambush is that your machine gun is going to be the key initiator. Obviously, in a linear ambush, you can still do a machine gun-led ambush, but it's key in an L-shaped because these are the ones that's going to be the first ones to fire upon them, hopefully producing the largest amount of casualties, and the assault team is going to do exactly what it does, assault through, same basic thing, your security teams. As a key note, remember you have your ORP back here, okay? We talked about that. Anytime you do a major operation, you're always going to have your ORP. Finally, let's start talking about raids. So raids, just like recon, is going to be another very, very in-depth subject that we're going to have a separate discussion about because raids are exactly that. They're extremely diverse. There's a lot that goes into them. As you can kind of see, I've got a link to a video in here from the U.S. Army. It's something we will have another discussion about, but we can go over some basics right now. A raid is just exactly that. It's a quick, limited assault. You're not trying to capture a territory. Raids are not designed for capturing cities or villages. It's just a quick, short, limited attack to gain whether it's intelligence, personnel, equipment, or deprive the enemy of that. So some possible objectives, some things you can use raids for, as you say, capture prisoners, capture things, whether that's material like a computer, a hard drive, that could be paperwork, but it could also be, prisoners, could be people. Like you just want to grab an enemy commander, an enemy that maybe knows something that you don't. It can be anything. Capture, destroy, but it can go converse. Destroy. So it could be destroy said computer, destroy hard drives, destroy, or it could even be assassinate a commander. It can be whatever it wants based off what the unit needs. Okay. Then we're going to say obtain information. confuse or disrupt the plans, a raid is a great idea to pull enemy resources away from a planned attack. For a quick example, look at D-Day, the operations at Normandy Beach. There was an entire raid, an entire operation to pull German resources to the west of France away from northern France. Same thing. You can do a quick raid on a checkpoint somewhere because you're planning to attack a main base, a main Russian base or whatever it is. Okay, and then finally that last point, liberate friendly personnel. Obviously, if you've lost somebody to the enemy in a captured position and they're an enemy prisoner of war, they are a POW, go get them back. A raid is how you do that. We'll look at some quick raid boards. Obviously, this will be open information for everyone, and I'll just very quickly go through it. We have your patrol. Remember we said ORP. ORP is the beginning to every single operation you have. So recon secure, coordinate, security element duties. You have your movement to position. So in a raid, you generally have two sections. You have your security and your assault. Okay. So the security element is to move to their position, block avenues of approach. So make sure reinforcements, if they do come, they have a hard time getting there. Okay. And then you're only going to discharge your weapon, shoot, if you either are detected or upon your command until the commander says so. Support element duties continued, move into position, cover the withdrawal of the assault element. The assault element, deploy close to the objective. You're going to seize and capture. You're going to do what you came there to do. Protect all your special teams, so demolition, sniper, whatever they are, you're going to protect them, and then you're going to withdraw when you're told, and the support will cover you as you do that. What I would refer to is the link that I included before about raids. It's a specific, but it's a very good example of how a raid would be continued, okay, or conducted. And then finally, you reorganize your patrol about 1 kilometer from your ORP, so you're going to move away from your ORP because the enemy could know where that is. Finally, we come to the last point, battle drills. So we've talked about how to organize your people, how to move, how to conduct different types of reactions. Now we're talking about how to actually conduct combat with the enemy, okay? First, react to contact. Your first thing that happens, get down, get cover, shoot back. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's ultimately what you're going to be doing when it comes to reacting to enemy contact. Get down, get cover, shoot back. Unit immediately, as we see in the diagram here, unit immediately returns fire, gets to a cover and concealed position as best you can. Finally, you're going to engage the enemy. So let's talk about react to contact and destroying the enemy. All right, so there's a few things to take into account. Obviously, if the enemy is too large, then you don't do this. Okay, you don't do it. But all circumstances being what they are, and you're able to overcome the enemy, this is how you're going to do this. So we're talking about this is your enemy force. All right, and this is you. So you've got your support element and your assault element. And I'll talk about why this is the way it is here in a little bit. So you're going this way. This is assuming they're to your front. Obviously, the whole thing changes when it's on the side because all you're going to do is the same thing, but to your side. So depending on your element, you have your support element and assault element. Okay, and all you're going to do is you're going to try and trap the enemy. We're going to go into this in more detail here shortly, and I'll explain. So that's react to contact. Basically, everybody's going to get online, everybody's just going to start shooting, and everybody's going to get behind something or someone. Hopefully something. Break contact. So we're going to talk about, okay, so now we've made contact with the enemy, but it's way too large of a force for us to be able to overwhelm. So we need to break contact. You'll see in the diagram here, it's kind of the reverse. One team is going to pop smoke grenades, or at the very least, in a disguised manner, try to return back. Other team is going to give suppressing fire, okay? once you're at, and then all you're going to do, remember we talked about successive and alternative bounding? You're going to do the same thing, but in reverse. Just going to come back and back and back until you are no longer in direct threat. Whoop. React to ambush, very similar. You're going to react, get down, get behind something, start shooting. Very simple. And then as you see in the diagram here, you're going to try and envelop the enemy. You're going to come around their flank and you're going to try and attack them because you don't have any other option. Assuming if it's a larger force, you can revert back to bright contact. Now we're going to talk about entering, clearing buildings. This is a very, I don't want to say complex, but it is. It's something that is not so easily grasped by a lot of people, even in the military. So when we talk about entering, clearing buildings, obviously you have the diagram, but we'll kind of walk through a little bit as how this works. Now, the other thing is it depends on the building, the composition. Is it brick? Is it mud? Is it clay? So this is something, again, military operations in urban terrain is a subject that we're going to have another separate discussion, another separate video on, because it is something that requires a lot of concentration. But very simply, so you have a basic room. You have your 4-man stack. Again, we're talking about a fire team, but it can be more. And you're going to go and clear this room. Again, we talk about the construction. It could be furniture in there. There could be something large in the center. But very basically, the first person is going to go in and choose left or right. That is their decision. Go left, we'll just say, for example, go left, hit this corner, make sure it's clear, and then he's going to push up right here. Second person is going to go the opposite, clear this sector, come up, and they're going to come almost on line with their number 1 person, and they're just looking at all this area. Okay, so finally we have number 3. Number 3 is going to go the opposite of number 2, so the same as number 1. Come over here, get in this corner. There they are. They're in their corner. Finally, number 4 goes opposite of number 3, so number 2. Right here, and they're in their corner. So you see now how not only the entire room is covered by somebody's weapon, but you have everybody in a position of dominance over the entire room, okay? So if you look at the diagram here, we have number 1, number 2, 1 through 6. Each one shows each person coming into their position of dominance in a room, okay? There's a video example there. It's from, I believe that's from another popular show. Very entertaining, but it also gives you a good idea of how to maneuver inside of a building. Like I said, that'll also be another point of discussion. Finally, let's look at react to indirect fire. Indirect fire is what we call, is a fancy word for artillery, mortars. You start getting shot at from above. All right. Any single person who hears or sees it, their job is to shout incoming, 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 incoming. Immediately, all team members will get in a prone position, lay on the ground, or find suitable cover. If you're in a town or village, you can get behind something. Otherwise, get down. The team leader is going to designate a distance and a direction, as well as an azimuth, and basically once the first salvo, the way artillery works is you generally fire a first blow, then you have to reload, and then fire again. So in between those salvos, while they're reloading, that's when you're going to say, the team leader will say 500 meters that direction, or 500 meters at 230 degrees. Go now. And so you'll start moving, or just 500 meters west, and everybody will figure out which way is west. Everybody will move. Okay. Once you get to that rally point, send up a report. Let higher command know that you've obviously been fired upon by artillery. And you'll progress from there, either whether they'll send counter artillery or you'll go find them and kill them yourselves. Conduct an assault. Finally, we've come to kind of the climax of everything. So let's talk about how to conduct an assault. And I'll try to be as quick as possible. So, we talked about the enemy. Your enemy is here. You've got your ORP here. And your objective is to attack and assault the enemy. So after you've conducted your ORP operations, which is gearing up, making sure you've got everything you need, your assault team is going to move here into a position of support, okay? So they're going to have whether it's a machine gun, whether it's a rocket, whatever they have, they're going to have all the tools they have right here to make sure the enemy cannot move in a hurry. Your squad and command team is going to be right here. They're going to be controlling the operation. And your assault team is going to come around here and prepare itself for exactly that, the assault. The support team is going to initiate. They're going to start firing machine guns, rockets, whatever they have, grenade launchers, to make sure that they not only suppress the enemy, but they fix the enemy. So the enemy cannot move, they cannot retreat, they cannot go anywhere. They have to stay and either fight or just sit and be scared because they're Russian. Then we have our assault team. Our assault team is going to begin to do exactly that, assault. Remember we talked about bounding. They're going to start successively or alternative, depending on what the team leader determines, they're going to start bounding and assaulting. Now when they get to about right here, they're going to have to signal to the command and your support team to start either shifting your fire or cease fire altogether. When they do that, they're going to stop, they're going to start shooting over here, or they're going to start, because what will happen is the enemy will start trying to run, so they can just start shooting over here. But they're going to start assaulting through the objective, okay? Then finally, they're going to tell the machine gun team, cease fire, cease fire, cease fire. Everything stops. So they're going to completely stop their fire, and they're just going to completely assault to, remember we talked about LOA, limit of advance. So that's theirs. Once they reach their LOA, they have now cleared the objective. We're going to clear it again. Your support team is going to pick up and move to their LOA. So you have two LOAs. The objective has been cleared not just once, but twice. We're going to do the same thing, TSE, Tactical Site Exploitation, which is checking patches, grabbing maps. We're picking off everything that we can get any sort of information off, okay? So all of this has been cleared. The squad commander, the platoon commander, the overall commander is going to make sure that everyone has water, food, equipment, ammunition, everything's okay. And then we're going to pick up. We're either going to do two things. We can go back to the ORP or continue forward, okay? It's a lot more complicated than that. We'll go into more depth when we have time and we're out in the field, and we can kind of walk through how these steps work. But that's essentially everything you need to know to understand small unit tactics. At this point, I'll kind of turn it over and we'll have an open discussion. We'll do more exercises in the future. Until then, have a good one.